Welcome to Advocate with Dr. Rufus Lowe, where we aspire each and every day to eradicate the silence of good people who allow bad things to happen. And in doing so, we can together provide a new and glorious path forward for all. Our conversation will be based on the teachings of my latest book entitled Shadow Tolerance, Your Guide to Accepting Racial Difference. Shall we begin?
A recent study came out that showed the top 20% most profitable Fortune 500 companies are actually responsible for over 50% of the reported and documented cases of hiring-based discrimination in the US. Friendly reminder, these are the same companies boasting about their progressive diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Companies like Goldman Sachs, where the CEO makes really uneducated and deeply racist comments like, "It's really hard to find qualified Black talent." Is it hard to find, or are you not looking? And let's not forget that studies show us Black talent typically has to be overqualified in order to get the same consideration as their white counterparts. And don't get me started on the job application process, because a recent study came out about a year and a half ago that showed Black talent, when applying for positions, was 10% less likely to get a call back when they were using a historically Black name. The example provided in the study was a name like Susie is more likely to get a call back than a name like Latoya with the exact same qualifications. So this Black History Month, I need you to remember that a lot of this isn't history, like it's right now. And
racial discrimination in hiring? Absolutely. But let me explain something to you. If you take a good person that's managing a business and they hire somebody and that person is a dipshit and that person gets fired and they file a racial discrimination lawsuit against that business owner or that manager, what do you think is going to happen the next time that guy goes to hire somebody? Well, he wants to know that he has the same opportunity to fire this person as he does this person. And if one of those people is going to be more difficult to fire if it doesn't work out, well, he's probably not going to choose that person. Business owners and managers need to know that they're going to have the option to fire someone without having to deal with a costly lawsuit.
During our last podcast, we talked about social disruptions to the status quo and the backlash that followed as a result. A couple of examples being the landmark case of Brown versus Board of Education, which essentially made segregation illegal, and the backlash of social anarchy and bitterness that started as a result, and also initiated what we now know as the Civil Rights Movement. I also used the election of, as an example, Barack Obama as a social disruption that initiated the backlash era of what we now refer to as Make America Great Again, where most people in marginalized communities would be hard pressed to find or discover great things in America's history of which they would like to repeat. Today, I started with two modern day clips that introduce logical arguments dealing with the backlash issue of hiring practices. Understand this, jobs are extremely important to members of marginalized communities because generational wealth is virtually non-existent for them. These hiring arguments, or to gain a job, usually spark discussions around affirmative action, which often trigger heated debates, which opponents arguing that it leads to something referred to as reverse discrimination. Of course, I am not afraid to civilly discuss this issue on my Advocate platform. Please refer to my website listed below if you would like to discuss further as a guest. But let's just give the actual reason and purpose for affirmative action initiatives. The goal of affirmative action is not to disadvantage any group, but rather to level the playing field for those who have historically been denied equal opportunities. So we'll just leave it at that because of my limited time. I'll talk a little bit more about that in future podcasts, but we will move forward for today. Another significant barrier is the prevalence of implicit bias. So the barrier that I'm referring to is advocacy and why backlash that occurs as a result of disruptions in social status quo result in a barrier, in this particular case, implicit bias, which affects decision making in subtle and profound ways. Implicit biases are the attitudes of stereotypes that unconsciously affect our understanding, our actions, and our decisions. These biases can manifest in various ways, from hiring practices, which we talked about earlier, that favor certain racial groups, to law enforcement practices that disproportionately target communities of color. For instance, research has revealed that Black individuals are more likely to be stopped and searched by the police, despite evidence showing that they are not more likely to carry illegal substances than their white counterparts. So it's just a thing that we need to realize that happens in our great country. Not to make it any less great, but it's just what happens and just how it is. This stereotype, or these stereotypes, perpetuate a cycle of mistrust, tension between law enforcement and marginalized communities, making it even more challenging to foster racial equity. Addressing the common misconceptions surrounding racial equity is vital for overcoming these challenges. One prevalent myth is that racial equity means treating everyone the same. Okay? And I'm going to call that a myth, and I'm going to repeat it again because I want you to see that it sounds like it might be fair, but it's not. It's kind of like a myth. The prevalent myth is that racial equity means treating everyone the same, regardless of their background. While this may sound fair in theory, it overlooks the historical and social context that have created unequal and starting points for different racial groups. Okay, so it assumes that everybody started off the same and they move up at the same level at the same paces. True racial equity requires acknowledging that these disparities and implementing targeted strategies that address the specific needs of marginalized communities. So if the playing ground starts way down here for some people and way up here for others, they can't start at the same place when they started with this much disparity between them. Just giving you a visual example. Additionally, there is often a concern that discussions about race and equity can lead to division rather than unity. Okay, using the example of the two individuals that were making their points about hiring practices. The gentleman at the end basically is making his assumption about managers and job creators as being at some kind of level when they hire people, that this level playing field actually is already in existence. But when they're hiring people at this level, where there's people that come in with this level of privilege or this level of example of what's been prevalent in their lives versus someone that comes up to here. So we got to understand that these disparities exist. However, it's essential to recognize that open dialogue about race can foster understanding, and it can also foster empathy, ultimately bringing communities together. By confronting uncomfortable truths about systemic racism and its impact, society can work towards collective healing and progress. Lastly, and I know I'm running short on time, the challenge of achieving racial equity is compounded by a lack of political will and commitment at various levels of government. Policies aimed at promoting equity often face opposition, that being the case of affirmative action, from those who view them as unnecessary, as a threat to their own interest. This resistance can shimmy legislative efforts and hinder the implementation of programs that are designed to support marginalized communities. In essence, designed to kind of even the playing field. In conclusion, the journey towards racial equity is laden with obstacles, with systemic racism and implicit bias to misconceptions and political resistance. By addressing these challenges head on, as we, as individuals of the Advocate platform, we head on fostering open dialogue, hoping that society can move closer to a more equitable future for all. Only through collective effort, though, and understanding can we dismantle these barriers that impede progress and create a world where everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive.